Here are the second parts for the doodle notes, the second page. So for the terms, I'm just going to do the short version since we only have a little bit of line here. Superior means towards the head. Inferior in humans is towards the feet. Wow, I cannot write words all of a sudden, sorry. In animals, these words might mean something different because superior usually means closer to the top. So if you're talking about an animal that walks on 4 legs, their top would not be toward their head necessarily. But we're talking about human anatomy, so we are. By the way, anterior and posterior are not on this list, but they were in the notes. They're just missing from this paper. Lateral means toward the side. And medial is towards the middle. You can see that these are opposites of each other. So for the honors people, when I said to draw 2 directions, that's what I mean. Pick ones that kind of go together. They're opposites of each other. Distal and proximal are kind of hard. I think they're the hardest ones to kind of get your head around. Distal means toward the ends of your hands or legs, whereas proximal means closer to the point of attachment, closer to your torso. We'll say closer to, well, let's say fingers and toes. Proximal will be closer to your torso. There's lots of ways you could say it, but that's basically what we're talking about. Deep is deep. It's farther from the surface. And superficial is closer to the surface. Whoa, hang on, sorry. My whole page just scrolled. Notability's having a day. For the box at the bottom, why? Why do we need these terms? They help us compare the locations of different structures. So they help us compare locations, especially if you're trying to write it and speak to somebody else. On the other side of the paper, it tells us what anatomical position means, and then says to draw a body outline in anatomical position. Try your best. I'm not that great with drawing either. But the head should be facing forward. The arms are at the sides. The feet, oh wow, that was awful. The feet should be on the ground and sort of facing forward, parallel to each other. The hands facing you, these are my hands, I tried. I'm not that great with drawing, do your best. On the bottom corner there, when you are talking about anatomy, the right and left are going to be opposite because you're thinking of the right and left on a different person. So it's kind of like if you and your friend were facing each other, their right would be your left. It's the opposite of what you would think. We're talking about the right and left on the person or the thing that you're looking at. So it's the opposite of yours. Or sort of like if you had a picture that was inverted. I didn't color much on this one. Feel free to color if you want to. But I'm going to go on to dividing up the body. First, we have the planes. These have different names depending on what you look at. I'm going to use the same names I used in the notes. The first plane is the left and the right one, so sagittal, and I'll also write left, right. And color in my little guy on the side here. This could also be called the median plane, the mid-sagittal plane, because of course we have several words for the same thing. Why wouldn't we? The next one is the frontal or coronal. And that would be the front and back. Or you could say anterior and posterior if you want to get fancy. And across the middle is transverse. Top and bottom. We will definitely see more about the planes whenever we go to do dissections. So for now, you just got to know what they are. Now for the cavities. So we have a guy on the side and a guy from the front. I'm not necessarily going to write words for both, but I will color them both the same way so you guys can see which one is which on both. In the head, that's the cranial cavity. The brain. Going down the back, that's where the spine would be, so that's the spinal cavity. It's in between the spinal bones. The chest area is the thoracic cavity, and then on the front picture, the picture of the guy from the front, it's divided up into specific parts inside. So let's say thoracic. This cavity up here, you don't really need to know that, so I'm just going to pretend it's not there. These are plural, your lungs, and then there's pericardium, which is the heart. Hang on a second, let me come back through here. Let's say your thoracic includes all these smaller parts that are on the other picture. It just only says thoracic on one, and then it gets more specific. So your pericardial is where your heart is. And the pleural cavity is where your lungs are. For now, if you remember thoracic, that's great. We'll talk more about the other cavities when we talk about lungs and heart and all that. The next one is the abdominal. And then the very bottom one is the pelvic. Or sometimes they're put together and called abdominopelvic. Abdominal. Abdominal. And what color for pelvic? Let's go with that. If you want to label them on both pictures, go crazy. I just labeled them on one and colored on both. So in your I am actually going to skip some of these words on this membrane one on the left because we don't need to know this specifically. They're called serous membranes. We did say that in the notes, so I'll say serous membranes, and then there are specific layers, but for that we don't really need to know very much, so I'm just going to pretend that's not there. We're just going to skip over that. The serous membranes are layers around each of these cavities to help protect and divide them. So now for the abdomen. In our notes we saw the 4 quadrants. You can divide it up even more, but I'm just going to do the 4 quadrants one. If you are more interested in doing those, you can. So again, I'm just going to pretend like that doesn't exist, unless you would really like to know. Maybe some of you nursing students might already know. So in these 4 quadrants, the point where they cross is your belly button or navel, and the right and left would be the right and left of the person you're looking at. So this is right and this is left. So the right side on top would be the right upper quadrant. The left side on top would be the left. You can write out the words right and left if you want to. I'm just going faster. And then we'd have right lower and left. Alrighty, that is page 2. Any questions? Please let me know. See you next time.